welcome back to this episode of this Healthy Life podcast. I'm very excited for my guest today. I have Dr. Joanne Kennedy here with us, and she is here to share a wealth of knowledge on histamine intolerance and methylation. She is a naturopathic doctor based in Sydney, and she works with clients worldwide. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited for you to share information on this very misunderstood topic.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Erica. I really hope I can shed some light onto this, very much understood.
Absolutely.
And kind of a bit hyped up topic.
Yes, yeah. I know. Histamine is the buzzword everywhere, but I don't think people really understand what it is and what processes go into, what it's doing to your body. So excited to kind of break that down here today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love for you to start with a brief intro, sharing a little bit about yourself and your practice and how you got into this space.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been a naturopath for 12 years now, and I was fortunate when I graduated that this is when MTHFR and methylation started to get a lot of traction, particularly MTHFR, with Ben Lynch leading the way in the US. And I was fortunate enough to work in a clinic with a lady that trained under him in Sydney. And so we were, it was MTHFR, but people that are unwell get their genes tested. So this is the people that have the mold illness, the oxate toxicity, the SIBO that's had forever that won't sort of shift because they have mold, or they have chronic hormonal dysregulation from all the inflammation from these issues. Right? So it's like what we're seeing in like naturopathic and functional medicine a lot now. I was really exposed to it quite early on in the piece. And so that was fortunate. And interestingly, Erica, all of these patients would present with histamine issues, right? So it's like we're doing MTHFR and looking at that gene and methylation, but the causes of methylation disruption are often the major causes of high histamine. So this is kind of where I was just fortunate enough to see this really early on. And then when I went out into my own practice, I wrote a book on histamine, and there's nothing like researching for a book to really understand something. So, and that's when I actually found out it's the most researched molecule in medical science, and they're just they're looking for the drugs to block the receptors. So there's so much research on histamine. And then once you see it in clinic, you can't unsee it.
Yeah,
right? 'Cause it's
absolutely.
just like, So I sort of built my own clinical practice, and then just got a lot of interest, particularly from the US. I think there's, modern living, stresses. There's just the amount of mold in America. I mean, there's mold everywhere, but there's pockets. New York down to Florida is bad. Pacific Northwest is quite bad. Dorm rooms of universities are bad. Colleges.
Hotel rooms.
Hotel rooms. So it's just, I got a lot of traction from the US. So it's sort of, and that's where I sort of, I reckon 70% of my patients are US now.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of how I started. And then I've sort of built my own clinical practice, and I've got an online course for practitioners as well. So I train other practitioners on methylation and histamine. And so that's just how it all started.
Awesome. And for people out there that are just tuning in and they may not be familiar with what histamine is, can you give us a kind of brief breakdown of what is histamine? What does it do in your body?
Yeah, interesting. So officially, histamine is a biogenic amine. Okay, biogenic means that it's made by living organisms. So it's made by animals and plants and humans. We need to understand that. So our body makes histamine. It's part of our immune system. And it's very simply, histamine gets triggered when there's inflammation. It widens capillaries and it allows for vasodilation so that the white blood cells and platelets can go in and try and heal. But when it becomes chronic, you have too much histamine and you can't break it down, right? So it's part of our immune system. It's also part of our brain neurotransmitters. It's actually a neurotransmitter in the brain. Okay, so we need histamine. It's important for alertness and memory, and helps regulate circadian rhythm. But when it gets too high, it can cause symptoms, right? We've got histamine receptors in most different organs, so it plays an important role. But the intolerance comes when you are creating too much and you can't break it down. And then also because a lot of plant foods contain histamine, when people consume these high histamine foods and their histamine bucket is already too high in their body, they will react. And then animals do have histamine as well. So again, if the animal protein is not super fresh, it can in a susceptible person cause a histamine reaction. So I think the word histamine intolerance kind of comes from people that recognize that they're intolerant to the foods. But essentially it's made in our body. It can just become too high.
Kind of overflow when you're filling it with too much of one
it's
thing.
Like the bucket gets too high. And
Absolutely.
then it comes out in symptoms. And because there's histamine receptors in every organ of the body, the symptoms are extremely widespread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so let's talk about some of these symptoms that people might be experiencing if they are dealing with histamine. So, like I think most people probably think like, oh, histamine, you take an antihistamine when you're itchy or having allergy symptoms. But what are kind of when you're dealing with a more kind of deep chronic histamine intolerance to some of these conditions, what are some symptoms that you might be experiencing?
A lot of gut issues. It is a major cause of heartburn. Reflux and heartburn, because histamine stimulates the H2 receptor, which releases hydrochloric acid, but it can overdo that. Too much hydrochloric acid, so heartburn. It can cause bloating, abdominal pain. It can cause like frequent bowel motions. It can cause loose stools. With the skin, it definitely causes hives and eczema. It definitely causes acne. So any women with acne listening, a major cause of acne. In the cardiovascular system, it can cause like heart palpitations, shortness of breath. It plays havoc with estrogen, like it actually increases estrogen. So a lot of women get like a lot of premenstrual syndrome, like a worsening of premenstrual syndrome due to that estrogen histamine link. We've also got histamine in our brain, so it causes headaches, migraines, vertigo, dizziness, insomnia, anxiety, depression, inability to regulate your body temperature. So in respiratory, like it causes all the allergy symptoms, and like it's a major cause of asthma. So it's really widespread. Yeah.
Wow. Man, it causes everything.
No, it does. It's interesting. And I know there's other causes of those things as well. Right. But when I see a case and people are ticking lots of the boxes, and they've also got the causes, well, they've also got the symptoms of the causes, it becomes very obvious that it's a histamine issue. So histamine's a symptom. Yeah, it's a symptom of an underlying cause.
Yeah, and you're always kind of digging for that root cause, which I want to get into a little bit here. So you mentioned, you know, chronic inflammation is definitely one. Mold is definitely very widespread and one of the triggers for histamine. What are some other things that you're uncovering when you're working with patients to kind of see like, hey, what's this root cause or what's setting off this inflammation and histamine in your body? Yeah,
we need to actually first start with gluten, because gluten in a lot of people will cause a lot of significant inflammation. Okay, and that can definitely drive up histamine. We've also got SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So SIBO is very problematic with histamine, a major cause of histamine. The DAO enzyme that breaks down histamine in the gut is highly concentrated in the small bowel, and SIBO is very common. Okay, so we see a lot of people with SIBO, a lot of people with a lot of histamine symptoms from SIBO. And what goes along with SIBO is digestive enzyme insufficiency. So if you don't have enough digestive enzymes, that can cause SIBO, or even if you don't have SIBO, having a low hydrochloric acid can definitely contribute to histamine issues if you're just not breaking down your food properly, particularly your animal proteins. You know, the disrupted digestive enzymes can cause a more acidic than alkaline environment in the small bowel. It's sort of like a breeding ground for SIBO. You've also got large bowel dysbiosis. You can get although this is not like, it's interesting. There's a lot of research on large bowel containing there's bacteria in the large bowel that if they're overgrown will release histamine. There's a lot of research on that, but clinically I don't actually find it that significant. I think you think that it would. So if anyone's done a stool test and just tried to correct the dysbiosis in the large intestine, which is an imbalance between good and bad bacteria, a lot of those bad releasing histamine. And if that hasn't worked, you need to dig deeper. Oxalates. So oxalates are sharp little crystals, like shards, and they deposit in the gut, in the joints. They can get into the bladder, the thyroid, the brain. They can get everywhere. And they cause chronic inflammation and a chronic release of histamine. So oxalates can just come from an overconsumption of very high oxalate foods, which people often do when they go on a health kick. because they give up gluten and they start having almond meal, almond flour, almond cookies, almond bread, almond butter.
Yeah. And all the grains too, especially
All
if you're
the
eating them
grains.
raw or doing like a grain juice and things. I think
Yeah.
people like always kind of miss that, right? Like they're like, oh, I'm being healthy. I'm drinking a grain juice every day. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like,
Yeah,
it's
no,
like
I know.
actually
It's
one
like,
of the
no,
worst things that you could actually do. Like enjoy
it's
it every now
crazy,
and
isn't
then,
it?
but like this is not something we should be eating every day because of,
No, not at all.
these repercussions that people don't think about.
Yeah, it's true. Like the grain smoothies. So spinach is really high in oxalate. Then people swap out their milky lattes for almond milk. Yeah, and then you've also got like buckwheat and quinoa, the high oxalate. So it's just people start having more pseudo grains and can push their oxalates too high. And celery juicing, that's super high in oxalate too. So for some people, it's not a problem, but if you're not doing well on these foods, is a sign, big sign of an oxalate problem. And then it's the gut microbiome that actually breaks down oxalate in food. In the gut, we don't have enzymes to deal with that. We need a healthy microbiome. So if your microbiome's not great, that can cause it. Or there are a lot of mold species that also contain oxalate. So anyone that's had mold, you definitely need. If you've been sort of diagnosed with mold illness, or you've sort of got an issue with mold, you really should look at oxalates at the same time. I see so many patients that have gone down the mold journey and the oxalate part's been missed.
Yeah. Is there testing that you can do to test to see if oxalates are an issue, or what do you recommend for that to see?
Yeah, it's the organic acids test.
Okay.
A really common test. So you can do that and see your oxalate levels.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely something I feel like everyone that's dealing with any sort of chronic illness should be, looking into histamine, looking into mold, looking into oxalates, and just really kind of seeing what is that underlying driver that's driving all this inflammation and your immune system to just kind of be flaring up.
Yeah, if you do suffer from the chronic illness and you haven't looked, you're totally right. It's so common. It causes huge histamine issues. Mold's a major cause of MCAS and SIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and muscle activation syndrome, and Lyme disease. So if you definitely need to, so if you know that there's been mold, if you know that you've been exposed to mold, or if you've lived anywhere where there's been a leak, it's just a big, or if you suspect, you got to get the building biologist out and test the house, because it can just go behind the walls and you never know. There can be like a slight minute leak somewhere, and it's released, and the mold's building it, and releases the mycotoxins, and mycotoxins are microscopic. You cannot see them. And they get into your bedding, the furniture, clothing, and they get into your body. So it's the mycotoxins that are the problem, and they're microscopic. So
and it's so hard for people to miss that too, right? Like you mentioned, it can be happening like a tiny leak behind a wall and you're never going to really see it. But also when you start having all these health issues and you're like, I was fine and then I wasn't. And it's just such a wormhole to go down. And, people don't think to test their environment or test their home or really kind of investigate like what's going on in the place that I'm spending most of my time. Or if you're working somewhere, going to school, like those buildings are also notorious for having issues, right? So like your house could be clean, but you're spending 8 hours a day at work or school, and like all of a sudden you have headaches and tired and brain fog and rashes, and you're like, what's wrong with me? I eat healthy, right? It's like the same kind of story that everybody seems to have, myself included at one point in my life, that thankfully I'm doing a lot better now, but just like dealing with
mold problems,
mold, all sorts of things. So
all the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff.
No, it's not fun, but I think if you remove yourself from your work and home environment and go somewhere for 2 weeks on a holiday and you feel a lot better, that's it. I understand it's less stress and things, but there's something to that. There's something more to that. It's a big red flag that there's mold. Yeah,
absolutely. Great. Well, I want to shift gears a little bit and I want to dive into genetics. So you mentioned that, you get a lot of people and they've done some of their genetics mostly because they're sick. And I think by this time, most people that are into health have probably heard about the MTHFR mutation, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. What is MTHFR and what are some of these other genetics that influence your ability to kind of detox histamine or, not have so many issues with it?
Okay. So MTHFR is a gene and an enzyme, right? So it's methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. Anything that's an A's in biology is an enzyme. Okay, so we have this enzyme in our body, and the role of the enzyme is to convert your folate from food into methylfolate. And methylfolate is the only form of folate that is used in a process called methylation. Okay, and methylation is very important. It basically governs how your entire body works, essentially. It's like an on-off switch for your entire physiology. Like, it's super important, right? It basically tells other enzymes what to do, okay? So it switches on and off. Things need to be on and off so that they come back to homeostasis, right? Now, if you've got an MTHFR gene mutation, there can be a potential for you to have a reduction in that enzyme function, okay? Up to 60, 70% if you're homozygous C677T. Okay, so it's like a choke point in the methylation pathway because it's the only enzyme that is converting the folate to methylfolate. There's not another enzyme that does that. So if there's a significant problem with that, it is something that we need to think about in combination with the other things, environmental things that impact methylation, other enzymes and genes. The other thing we now know is that even if you don't have an MTHFR gene mutation at all, folic acid is such a problem because it actually really blocks the enzymes, other enzymes in the folate pathway that take folate and convert it down this folate pathway. There's several enzymes in the folate pathway, MTHFR being right at the bottom. Okay. And so if you're consuming a lot of folic acid, which is fortified in wheat in the US, in Australia, other countries, I'm sure, if it's in processed foods, it's in supplements, even if you do not have an MTHFR gene mutation, it's very hard for your body to convert all of that folic acid into methylfolate. It's synthetic form. Okay, so this is why folic acid is quite problematic for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I want to add in here too that I feel like they put synthetic folic acid into everything, right? Like this is fortified in like cereals that you might be eating or foods that you might be eating. And so many, lesser quality supplement brands are also using just regular folic acid, not the regular methylated folate. So if you're taking supplements and you have this mutation, which is about 50% or so of the population, you need to be very mindful. You need to be very mindful of the supplements that you're taking and what you're doing. Yeah.
I first need to say, though, a lot of people should not take methylfolate, though, either. So I'll get to that in a minute. If taking folinic acid, it's not folic, it's folinic, is going to be something that just without a consult with myself or a professional in this space is something that you probably could take without worrying about having an adverse reaction to it. Okay, now this is important. So methylation, there's 13, 14 genes that are specific for the methylation, for making SAMe in the body. So SAMe is the body's major methyl donor. It goes around the body and makes these methyl groups. Okay, so there's some other gene mutations, MTR and MTRR. This has got to do with vitamin B12 metabolism. BHMT, which is using choline for methylation. We've got the CBS gene. There's quite a few different genes that are directly involved in just getting this SAMe produced. And there are many environmental things that can impact that. Okay. SIBO, mold, oxalates, funnily enough, all the things that drive up histamine. Okay. Or if you just poor diet, things like that. Okay. And we've also got hormones. Women's hormones can cause issues with this cycle. And then we have so many different genes and enzymes that are involved in what methylation does. Okay, and I first need to tell people that you really do not understand what your methylation is from a gene report. You need to test it. So you can now do saliva swab tests. It's like a COVID test that you can do from home. Okay. It's a US company. It's brilliant. So you can test your methylation at home with a saliva swab test and you can see if you're over-methylating or under, because just because you've got an MTHFR gene mutation does not mean that you're an under-methylator. And I know people are going to be like, over-methylation, under-methylation is not a thing. It's complex, right? But we're going to call it that just for ease of conversation, right? So potentially you can have too many methyls built up that are not being distributed correctly, distributed to the right places. It can be like there's all these methyl groups on the transport truck and no driver. So they're just high. right? Does that make sense? So you can have build up of all these methyl groups, or you can be under. And I've been using this test a lot in my patients, Erica. And what we always sort of thought, oh, you have all the gene mutations to say that you're an undermethylator. But because of environmental things, and particularly estrogen with women, they're overmethylating.
Interesting. So then you would have supplemented them, and then they would have even overmethylated more, causing more issues, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So this is why people give methyl Bs out like candy. You go to the health food shop, and the woman and the girl's like, oh, you got MTHFR, you need methyl Bs, you need methylfolate. Integrative doctors, nutritionists, and naturopaths are doing it, right? They're giving out these methyl Bs, and often women are, particularly women, overmethylating. So this, just so you know, like this test is, I've got, it's available for sale on my website. I've got a link through to the website in the US.
Perfect. We'll link to it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, can, because Eric, this is really important for people. Like, I'm glad we can talk about it. So you can just access it through my website. It's called Methylation Home Test. It's quite new. I've been working with scientists in the US now for about 6 months, and it's just opened a can of worms, big time.
Awesome. So I'm glad I have a question. So just because you test, say like you test at one point, right? And you say you find out that you're overmethylating, and so you're not going to do things, like how often should you be doing this test to kind of check your methylation? Is it like a once a year thing to kind of check in, once every 6 months, or how do you kind of address that you don't become an undermethylator, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you're, very simply, if you're a menstruating woman, okay, your methylation can change a lot during the menstrual cycle. So what I would suggest women do is you can purchase 40 test strips. You would test for a whole methylation cycle, and you can just sort of think, oh, wow, I'm like really overmethylating, right? So there's supplements recommended. Niacinamide reduces methyls. How it does it is niacinamide requires methyl groups to take it into the Krebs cycle for energy. So it's using your methyls, and also high-dose vitamin C. Vitamin C is a cofactor for histamine N-methyltransferase, which breaks down histamine. So it helps use your methyls. Okay, so if you're overmethylating, you would do that. Women feel, I can't tell you, Erica, these women have been using it on my women with premenstrual dysphoric disorder. They were so depressed and suicidal, right? They'd been taking B vitamins for years. They had fibroids, they've estrogen dominant, high histamine. It seems like MTHFR. This is like a picture, high homocysteine. This is a picture of an undermethylator. They're not. They're over. Time and time and time again. Like, this is a can of worms. Like, it's really interesting. They come off the Bs, they take the niacinamide vitamin C, and their mood is super stable. And I'm seeing this a lot. So women, if you're a menstruating woman, I'd test for a whole menstrual cycle. You can adjust, you can just start to supplement, and you can feel the difference in your mood. Okay. I also had a lady in Colorado who had, she had massive histamine symptoms. Hers was chronic sinus issues. She was taking lots of methyl Bs, lots, because she was homozygous C677T. And I pulled her off those. She did the methylation test. She's severely overmethylating. Took the vitamin C and the niacinamide, and it's completely fixed her sinus issues.
Wow. That's incredible.
It's crazy. It's incredible. So women, I would just get the 40 test strips. You can just start testing. Look, undermethylation is way easier to understand when it comes from like genetic snips, because we can look at like what makes SAMe. What are the genes involved in making SAMe? So we've got MTHFR, MTR, MTRR, CBS, BHMT, MAT. We can see those, right? They're genes that are very popular that are tested in these panels. But overmethylation is way more complicated. And I'm working with this scientist, James, where we're chatting a lot because I'm a clinician, he's a scientist, and we're sort of working together to sort of gather data. But it's definitely women that will definitely overmethylate more. If you're a man, you just buy 16 test strips and you can see. But essentially, Erica, that's where you can start, because it's going to make you feel a lot better. And then you would, if you're interested, you would potentially look at working with a clinician to work out how to why you have
balance
that problem.
it. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's complex.
Mm-hmm.
But the simple thing is testing and then supplementing is very simple and efficacious and very helpful and not expensive, really.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It can
And then
really
you know exactly what your body needs as well, instead of just kind of guessing, oh, I need B vitamins, and then, wondering why you still don't feel good.
Exactly. So I've never been heavy-handed with supplementing my patients with methyls because I've seen it cause massive side effects and serious side effects, anxiety, depression, panic, suicidal ideation. And, I'm not running an emergency clinic. I can't deal. I don't have the capacity to deal with phone calls at midnight on Sunday because it is very problematic. So I learnt early in the piece not to sort of rely on them. How I sort of work is I look at all the things in the environment with your diet and lifestyle and things, oxalates and mold and SIBO, and I get histamines down and I make sure you absorb and you are utilizing your methyl donor nutrients to support the methylation pathways. And in a lot of people, that's the way to go. It's more people with more severe presentations of chronic health issues and particularly around chronic mood, and that will include women with premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Interesting. And so then if you are one of these overmethylators and you've been taking the Bs and you have to kind of stop to kind of reset yourself, right? You do the methylation test, you find that you're overmethylating, you're going to start taking this up vitamin C and things. Is there ever a time and a place where you can start to add some of those B vitamins back in, maybe like once a week or like on occasion, because those are important for our body too, right? Or is it, if you're overmethylating, this is just something
if you're overmethylating, you're not going to be feeling good on them.
Okay.
The thing, so this is all quite new, Erica, doing this test, but some people were they swung between slightly over to slightly under. And then that is a complex mix of in what they're doing environmentally. Funnily enough, one of my girls who was severely overmethylating, the only time she was undermethylating was when she ate a lot of sugar. Yeah. So you can just start to see patterns. But it's just it's a good place for people to start because it can really get you on the right path and get your mood a lot better and a lot more stable, get your histamines under control, part of it. So, but it's just it's just one test, but it can help. But it's looking at
gets you a lot of information.
Yeah, because I have so many people come in with their gene reports, and when you look at gene reports, everything can contradict.
Mm-hmm. It says, or it can just look really grim too, right? You like have all these different genetic mutations, and you're just like,
you never go outside.
How am I even alive?
Yeah, you're just not going to go outside. So, but things can say, oh, you need SAMe, or you shouldn't take SAMe, or you need this or that, and it can very much it can get very confusing. And so now we can actually see in real time, and it's easy to test because when we do blood tests, sends it off to the lab to look at the methylation panel, and particularly with women, it can change. It changes with hormones. So you get the test result 2 weeks later and it's
already different. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just what I really want to say to listeners is we have the genes. They can provide us with some, well, you know what? I used to think that they could provide us with some educated guesswork, but I'm not that convinced.
Because just because you have the gene doesn't mean that it's active or doing anything as well, right? I think that's important for people to know. It's like, sure, you can take a look at this genetic report. You have all of them, but are they active? Are they doing anything? Or is it this other gene that's the only one that's active that you need to focus on balancing? So it seems like doing the testing to kind of see what your body's doing and using is really the way to go, so you can adjust from there instead of looking at a report and guessing, right?
It's really true. This is why I'm finding it really useful. So just the thing with MTHFR, for everybody, we just need to understand that if you do not eat any folate-rich foods, if you're not eating your green leafy vegetables and legumes, and you're eating a lot of processed foods and white and bread, you're just hindering your methylfolate levels. Right. So this is the thing is we always can go back to environment, diet, and what causes a folate deficiency is SIBO. Like we need a healthy small intestine to actually absorb our folate foods. So it just comes back to the basic naturopathic medicine of eating well and getting your gut healthy, right? So we come back to basics. But that's essentially what MTHFR is converts folate into methylfolate. We all need it. And it is the only enzyme that does that. So in the body, there's often other enzymes that, the body can have several pathways of things, but this is just the one. And it can just cause a big choke point in that pathway. But again, it doesn't mean that you're over or under methylating just on its own. You need to sort of test to actually see.
To see what's going on. And then so are there occasions where someone may not have the MTHFR mutation, but they have some of these other genetic SNPs that affect the methylation cycle? So then those you have to address completely different, right? Because their folate's working correctly, but something else is off. So can you talk a little bit about what some of those common genes are? I know there's like the COMT, I think the CBS gene and things like that. Can you break down a little bit about what those do in the body and how to support that?
So CBS is a really interesting gene, cystathione beta synthase. It's an enzyme. So it's a gene and an enzyme, right? So the gene provides a code for the enzyme. That enzyme's role is a really important one. It takes homocysteine down what we call the CBS or transsulfuration pathway, sulfur being a key word here. Okay, so homocysteine has two roles. One, it's involved in making SAMe for methylation, and the second, it's a storage molecule for sulfur. So it provides the sulfur required for this transsulfuration pathway, and sulfur it makes glutathione, your body's major antioxidant, big thing. Makes taurine, right, a calming neurotransmitter. It's also important for like bile synthesis, other things. And it also provides the sulfur for a liver detoxification in the liver pathway called sulfation. It breaks down a lot of toxins, hormones, okay? So it's a very important pathway. So it's interesting how the body just links these two important pathways together, right? But that CBS enzyme also, it's involved in keeping homocysteine in check. Like homocysteine should sit between like 7 and sort of, 10, right? Men are a bit higher, right? 7 to sort of 10. And what can happen if there's issues with the CBS enzyme is that homocysteine can start building. It's not, that enzyme's not taking the homocysteine down the pathway, and it can contribute to homocysteine building up in the body, and which is a cardiovascular, blood clotting, neurodegenerative disease risk. Okay, so it's part of the cardiovascular risk profile, along with high blood pressure and central adiposity and high cholesterol. But it damages the blood-brain barrier, so it's linked to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, like with other complex genetics and environment, and it can cause blood clotting, cause miscarriage. So that enzyme is very important for regulating homocysteine levels. Okay, now what we need to understand is that enzyme is very, very impacted by the environment. And the big thing that causes that enzyme to run fast is mold and oxalates.
Which we covered. Don't drink those green smoothies, and don't drink those don't live in mold.
Okay. So I know this is all complicated, but the take-home message, guys, it's like it's so much of it is environmental, right? So that enzyme is very, time and time again, you see people with low homocysteine, and it's due to mold and oxalates. Okay. Now, the other two enzymes that are very important is the MTR and MTRR gene SNPs. Basically, this got to do with your vitamin B12 metabolism. Interesting to see, but what we see time and time again is just B12 deficiency due to stress, due to SIBO, due to not eating enough animal protein. Okay, so zinc deficiency. You need zinc to make hydrochloric acid. You need to eat animal protein to get enough hydrochloric acid. You need to not be stressed. You need to not be on proton pump inhibitors, because this all reduces the absorption of vitamin B12. Okay, so it's B12 deficiency is something is very common. It's just so common. Okay, so interesting. We've got some gene mutations, but let's have a look. Like, what's your stress? What's your zinc levels like? Are you taking proton pump inhibitors? Do you have SIBO? what do we need to do about B12 absorption? Okay. We've got another gene called the BHMT gene, and BHMT runs on choline. Okay, so choline converts into, it's complex, this choline converts into betaine and trimethylglycine. Anyway, that enzyme is there to also convert homocysteine to methionine. So methylfolate and methyl B12 convert homocysteine into methionine, but we've also got another pathway. We call it the short route, and it relies on choline or betaine. And so you can have gene mutations on that as well. And then there's a gene called the MAT gene. The MAT gene takes methionine into SAMe, S-adenosylmethionine. That enzyme is very sensitive and very prone to slowing of functioning due to inflammation, oxidative stress. So viruses, mold, bacterial overgrowth, environmental toxins, etc.
Mm-hmm. So it really sets you up for chronic issues.
Yeah. So they're the big genes that are involved in making SAMe. Okay. So yes, if you've got lots of SNPs on those genes, well, and especially if you're male, then you would look at a gene report like that, do the methylation test from home and go, yeah, like I'm not methylating well. But the thing with women is estrogen can just override that whole, the hormones can override all of that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's fluctuating so much through the entire month too, right? So it's like you might feel good one day and then all of a sudden you have a shift in all of this and completely changes how you feel.
Completely changes how you feel. Yeah, yeah. So genes are sort of interesting, but that you just don't focus on genes and you don't supplement due to a gene mutation because it's not the right way to go, right? So a lot of companies will say you've got this gene, this gene, this gene, you need to take copper, you need to take zinc, you need to take magnesium, you need to take B6. It's like, no, what if you've got XYZ other problem going on?
Yeah.
For instance,
it's almost like you need some sort of app or a checklist to kind of enter it all in with your genes, right? And see what can override. I mean,
that's right. But it would be very
not needed.
It's just, I don't know. It would still be quite difficult. The thing with oxalates is when you take vitamin B6, it can sort of affect your oxalates, things like that. And oxalates are just not very well known. Vitamin C increases oxalate. So it's just
Vitamin C does, really? I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, in the blood it can increase oxalate. So this is why when you look at, and also zinc and copper, so a lot of people are told to take copper for Dow, but, because it helps with Dow, but their zinc's super low, and if you take more copper, it hinders your zinc absorption. Right? And zinc is so important for neurotransmitter synthesis, progesterone, immune, gut function. So just when you're just supplementing for a gene, it can often be really the wrong way to go. So it's more like you need to do, in my mind, you look at the functional medicine testing that is available, SIBO testing, Dutch hormones testing, microbiome testing, organic acids. These tests give so much information. And then if you're interested in methylation, I'd be doing the at-home methylation. It's called Mood Sense methylation. So you can just see, and getting the methylation just tweaked like that in real time is so helpful. Do you know what I'm also finding it helpful for is my patients that have mold, oxalates, chronic gut issues, if they're women, their hormones, it just causes havoc with hormones and mood. And just chronic stress on the body. Often people end up with chronic illnesses due to trauma as well. Yeah, we know that.
Absolutely.
And then they do somatic healing and a lot of body work to try and really heal, but they just don't get too far. They find it very exhausting. They sort of do the simple exercises and then they can't do it for 2 days. I'm talking very simple things. I've done this on several women like this. They're all severely overmethylating. Getting that sorted really calms their mood and their nervous systems down. So they get really irritated and angry. frustrated, insomnia, terrible PMS, they get that under control, then their nervous system's not so jacked up, right? So it calms down the nervous system so they're able to integrate the somatic work, the body work, the breathing work. And then the gut won't heal until you're in your parasympathetic nervous system dominance.
Yeah, till your body's relaxed and feels safe to be able to heal.
Exactly. So I'm finding it quite useful in that regard as well, just to sort of help these women calm. And I had a guy in the US the other day. He's just had chronic long-term depression and low motivation, low mood. And we looked at his methylation tests, and it's severely undermethylated. And this is the thing, like, he's seen psychologists, psychiatrists, he's been put on all these meds. And, I actually said to him, he does drink a little bit too much alcohol, but it doesn't matter if he stops. It does not change his mood, Erica. And sometimes his diet's okay, sometimes it's not, but he's severely undermethylating. And so he's been like that for a long, long time. And people would, it almost makes me cry. He nearly cried. It's like, I was like, I believe you, because you have your genetics and your methylation. We've tested it. You've been severely low dopamine, low serotonin for a very, very long time. And people are always like, just push through, mate.
It's affecting all the neurotransmitters.
Push through, don't drink so much. He kind of just drinks to calm down. But when he stops drinking, it doesn't actually change, right? So there's some people, Eric, it's not the diet and lifestyle stuff that's their problem. A lot of us, it is. But for some people, if they have significant disrupted methylation and their neurotransmitters are out of balance or simply low or high or out of balance, these are the people that don't respond to the exercise, the diet changes, the sleep changes, the motivational talks, the meditation. They don't respond. And this is where methylation is so important to correct, because then you can get the lifestyle stuff in place and start to layer.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got time for one more question. So I want to talk a little bit about some of your online group coaching that you offer. So you have a histamine and methylation online group. I'd love for you to share a little bit about that and how people can work with that. I know you do it for practitioners and students as well to gain some knowledge on how they can help their health and methylation.
Yeah, so I put together a course about 18 months ago now, and it is all about the major causes of high histamine. So we go into digestive enzyme insufficiency, SIBO, large bowel dysbiosis, oxalates, mold, estrogen, and methylation issues. And we also do a whole module on MTHFR. I'm kind of just like what you need to know. You need to calm your patients down and not freak them out about it. So it's all about MTHFR. And then I've got a whole module on methylation, and then a whole module on the transsulfuration pathway, which is really impacted by mold and oxalates, right? So essentially the framework of this is how I always work, is that the major causes of high histamine are major disruptors in methylation. So what we do is we really work on identifying the major causes of high histamine, working with that at the same time, gently supporting methylation. And now that I'm doing this mood sense test, I'm layering on that, and I'm teaching my practitioners and students who are the red flag patients that we need to send off for methylation testing, and we need to correct their methylation as a priority rather than support it gently with doing the other things. So there's kind of like two buckets of patients. Does that make sense? It's like some people you just need to fix the mold, the SIBO, the oxalates, and the digestive enzymes, and then voila, they're methylating beautifully. Yeah, and then there's the people who are like, no, they're stuck. Their biochemistry is really out, and we need to address that as a priority, and then the other things will integrate. So it's just a it's just a framework. So, so basically the information on the course is on my website. I'm taking applications now. It's open for applications, so you can just it's a really simple application form, and I will hopefully be running it sort of August, August, September this year. There's lots of I've run it before. People loved it, and it's great. We have practitioners from all over the world. France, Germany, Dubai, Austria, Canada, US. So it's just great to also learn from other practitioners who are specialists in oxalates and mold and SIBO and things. And we meet live Zoom. We do live Zoom calls every week. So yeah, no, it's great. It's really, I love teaching it. So so it's for students, it's for practitioners and students. So, even if you're like a nurse practitioner, I know they have nurse practitioners in the US, nurse practitioners, students, it doesn't matter where you are in your education. You can always, there's so much to learn about this stuff. Doctors, integrative doctors, nutritionists, naturopaths, health coaches. Yeah.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, we'll link to everything on the website. If people want to find you online, what's the best place to find you?
Just Joanne Kennedy naturopathy.com is my website. And then I've got a podcast, I actually launched my own podcast, Erica. It's called Histamine Well.
Okay.
Just
we'll
Histamine Well podcast. And then Instagram is just Joanne Kennedy Naturopath and YouTube Joanne Kennedy Naturopath. So it's just all my name, basically.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much, Joanne. This has been such an incredible wealth of knowledge. And even I learned a lot on this podcast myself. Good. So very excited to share this with the audience. And we'll link to everything and the methylation test as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.